Marcus is 42 years old. He runs a department of 70 people inside a firm that pays him exceptionally well to be exceptionally reliable. By every external measure, his life is a triumph. 3 children. A marriage that, when photographed, looks happy. A title that opens doors. He has not slept properly in 11 months. His doctor calls it stress. His therapist calls it burnout. Jung had an older word for it. What is collapsing in Marcus is not his career. His career is, by all accounts, the most stable thing about him. What is collapsing is the strategy that built the career, the strategy that built the marriage, the strategy that built the version of himself he learned, somewhere around the age of 9, was the only acceptable version. The strategy is called perfectionism. And in Jungian terms, what perfectionism produces is a very particular kind of shadow. Jung's concept of the shadow is one of the most popularized and most misunderstood ideas in 20th century psychology. The pop version is straightforward. The shadow is your dark side, the hidden self, the part you keep secret. Jung's actual concept is more precise, and the precision matters. In the second volume of Ion, published in 1951, Jung wrote a definition that has been reduced to a single phrase on bookmarks and posters. The phrase, in the original, is part of a longer argument about ego development. Jung wrote, and I quote only the fragment that bears directly on our case. 12 words. A moral problem, not a personality flaw, not a hidden vice waiting to be acted out. A moral problem, in the strict philosophical sense. Something that asks something of the conscious mind. Something that demands a position be taken. The shadow, in Jung's framing, is composed of everything the ego refused to integrate during the process of becoming a functional adult. Everything that did not fit the chosen identity. Everything that had to be set aside in order for the chosen identity to cohere. For most people, the shadow contains material that is genuinely uncomfortable. Aggression, envy, greed. The garden variety contents of any honest self-inventory. But for the perfectionist, the shadow contains something stranger. The shadow of the perfectionist is not full of sins. It is full of refused goodness. It is full of every gentleness, every unstructured afternoon, every modest ambition, every act of laziness, every spontaneous foolishness that the perfectionist had to disown in order to become reliable. The perfectionist does not repress what is dark. The perfectionist represses what is ordinary. How does this happen? Jung described the mechanism in the first volume of the collected works on archetypes in a passage about the persona. The persona, in Jung's terminology, is the social mask, the face one wears for the world. The persona is necessary. Without it, there is no social participation. With it, there is the constant low-level cost of having to maintain the mask. For most adults, the cost is bearable. For the perfectionist, the cost compounds. The reason it compounds is structural. The perfectionist persona is not flexible. It does not adapt to context. It is the same in the boardroom, in the bedroom, in the conversation with the child about the school report. The same standard applies. The same vigilance. The same refusal to drop the standard for the sake of the moment. And every refusal to drop the standard, every small act of holding the line, deposits another grain of unprocessed material in the shadow. Jung wrote, in the same body of work, that what is unrecognized in the shadow does not stay still. It does not patiently wait for permission. It accumulates pressure. He used hydraulic metaphors deliberately. He spoke of the unconscious in terms of energy economies. The energy denied to the shadow has to go somewhere. In the perfectionist, the energy denied to the shadow goes into the persona. The persona becomes harder, more polished, more beyond reproach, and the shadow becomes correspondingly more disowned. The split widens. At first, the widening is invisible. The career advances. The marriage holds. The children appear, in photographs, to be thriving. Then, somewhere in the early 40s, a small failure of energy management occurs. The perfectionist cannot sleep, or can sleep but cannot dream, or dreams the same dream of being unprepared for an examination, decade after decade, with rising urgency, or wakes at 3 in the morning with what feels like a chemical wrongness in the chest, or finds, suddenly, that he no longer recognizes the language his wife uses. None of this is the breakdown yet. This is only the warning. Jung argued, in a passage often cited by analysts who work with high-functioning patients, that the shadow can be acknowledged or it can be enacted. Acknowledgement is the slow, deliberate work of looking at what was set aside in conditions of safety and allowing it back into the personality. Enactment is the involuntary version. The shadow erupts. The marriage ends. The career ends. The carefully constructed identity ends. And the perfectionist, in the wreckage, finally meets the parts of himself that he has been refusing for 30 years. Return now to Marcus. The standard reading of Marcus is that he is overworked. The standard reading of Marcus is that he should rest more. He should. The standard reading is not wrong. It is incomplete. The Jungian reading does not contradict the medical reading. It adds a question. The question is, what was Marcus required to refuse in order to become the man who could not slow down? If we ask Marcus directly, he will say nothing. He will say he chose his life freely. He will say he likes his work. He will say his standards are simply who he is. This answer is not dishonest. It is the answer of the persona. The persona has been speaking on behalf of Marcus for so long that Marcus genuinely cannot tell the difference. To find the shadow, we have to listen for what is missing. What is missing in Marcus's life is unstructured time. There is no afternoon in any week of any month that is not accounted for. There is no friendship that exists outside the logic of mutual usefulness. There is no creative practice. There is no spiritual practice. There is no body practice that is not optimized for output. There is no relationship to nature that is not framed as recovery for the next quarter. The unaccounted for has been completely systematized out of his calendar. What also missing is grief. Marcus's father died 11 years ago. The funeral was efficient. The estate was settled in 3 weeks. There was, by Marcus's own description, no time to fall apart. There has not been a moment since when falling apart was permitted. The grief did not vanish. The grief, in the language of analytical psychology, was deposited in the shadow with everything else that did not fit the persona's brief. It is now waking up in the chest at 3 in the morning when the persona is too tired to maintain its sentinels. This is what is happening to Marcus. The doctor's diagnosis is not wrong. It is the surface of a deeper process. The deeper process is the shadow becoming insistent. The strategy that built the life is now being audited by the parts of the self the strategy had to refuse. And the audit cannot be paid off with another holiday. 3 questions, then, for those who recognize something of Marcus. They are not therapeutic questions. They are questions Jung's framework would suggest sitting with, slowly, in the kind of quiet a busy life rarely permits. First, what did the version of you that succeeded have to refuse in order to succeed? Not the obvious vices, the ordinary qualities, the slowness, the aimlessness, the unproductive tenderness, the grief that was never finished. Second, where, in any given week, is there room for what was refused? If the honest answer is nowhere, that is information. It is not yet a problem. It is a description of a closed system. Third, if the structure that has carried you broke down tomorrow, what part of you would remain? The persona is the structure. The shadow is what the structure has been suppressing. Individuation, in Jung's framework, is the long process of acquainting one with the other. If something here has resonated, the right response is not to apply Jung as a self-help framework. The right response is to sit, for an evening, with what was named. Below this video is a short guide. 5 questions to begin shadow work. It is not therapy. It is a prompt for honest reading. If this kind of work matters to you, subscribe. We publish 1 essay each Sunday.